Step one in the Farage revolt is smash the Tories. Step two is turn your attention to the Labour Party and say, we are now the only opposition to the Labour Party in all of those working class seats. So from 2024 to 2028, 2029, when the next election will be, and Nigel Farage has made this clear, this is his strategy, he will then turn and basically attack Labour for 5 years, right? And to be honest, there'll be a lot to attack because Labour will not control illegal migration. They basically said they're going to give an amnesty to 100,000 people. They're going to overturn all of the legislation that Rishi Sunak has put in to try and stop the boats coming, or at least to try and discourage them coming. They're going to put the woke ideology on steroids. They're going to give votes to 16-year-olds. They're going to weaken the United Kingdom by devolving more power down to Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the regions. And they're basically going to, I suspect, usher in a more aggressive political correctness, a kind of, hate laws, hate speech, bringing all this kind of stuff in to try and control the national conversation. So if Farage gets that right, and there's lots of things that can go wrong, he needs good people around him, he needs money, he needs manpower, he needs conservatives to defect. What are all those conservatives who lose their seats? Where are they going to go? Are they going to join Farage, or are they going to leave politics? It's an interesting question. If he can start to do that stuff, then he has a real chance at doing what he really wants to do, which is realign the right in British politics, completely redevelop, reshape conservatism in Britain like the Canadians did in the early 1990s. Because that's the only example we have in history when the Reform Party of Canada actually replaced the progressive conservatives and it basically said, you're too liberal. You're not a conservative party. Yeah. And now, the end result is what we see now is the Conservatives actually doing quite well in the polling.
You've known Nigel Farage for 10, 20 years, long term. Can you give us an insight? Because from the Czech Republic, from Prague, it's very, we see just pieces, usually the most radical content, and Czech commentators, very liberal guys, they hate him. So
of course they do.
Of course they do. But it's from my point of view, I probably don't agree with some of the stuff he has to say, but I find it absolutely, I don't know, amazing or admirable, his will to go for a goal like Brexit, whatever, if you agree with it or not. And then when you reach the goal, go away from politics. It's something because Czech politicians usually stuck to their seats until the very last moment. When they get out, you see it's like a drug addiction to them. So for somebody just to say, Brexit is my goal at the moment, it's done. I don't have any other power moves. I'm out. And now he sees the space to enter the politics and reform the right. So he goes again. But what's his thinking and his long-term end goal?
I think if you want to understand Nigel, you have to understand his career in the city. He was a broker, trader. He views politics like he viewed business. So he once said to me that in politics, you buy the shares when they're very cheap and you sell them when they're very high. And so for Nigel, the key thing has always been timing. He wants to come into the political system when the opportunity for profit is at its maximum. And he will leave when he feels that he's made as much as he can in terms of impact and influence. I think his long-term goal now is to, firstly, to give a voice to people who have been with him for 30 years. The thing that changed his decision during this campaign to stand was his sense of loyalty to the people who have been with him since the 1990s, who were saying to him, look, Nigel, we followed you for decades. This is your only opportunity now to reshape the right. How can you not stand? How can you not do this? And Rishi Sunak called the election early because he tried to outflank Nigel. He tried to say, look, if I go now, Farage is not organised, his people aren't organised. We can go, we can win the election, they won't be ready. And over the course of about 24 hours, Farage took a walk on the beach, and he has a saying, if you go to the pub with Nigel, you're not going for one or two drinks, right? you're going for like 10, and you're there all day. But he has a saying, he'll say, reload. If you get to the end of your pint, he wants to reload. And in politics, it's the same. He took a walk on the beach and he said, reload, it's time to go back in, because he can sense that the current political class in Britain is so weak that I think he just smells such an opportunity. He's also been influenced by his time with Trump. He's seen how Trump has realigned the Republicans. He's seen how Trump has stood up to media. He's a better campaigner now than he was during Brexit. He's older, wiser. My students have a saying, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
Yeah, whatever.
My Gen Z students have a saying, which is 0 fucks given, right?
Yeah.
So, or they say based. If somebody is based, it means they stand up for their convictions and they don't care what somebody else says. They're based. The opposite of that is coped. So if you're just trying to get through life and not be true to your convictions, you're coped. Well, they would say Farage is based because he genuinely comes out and says, I think this, I will stick to this, I will see it through, right? And I think there's more of that aspect to him now than there was in 2016, because he can see that he's demonstrated proof of concept. He can beat the establishment. He's got, I think, a sense that there's probably never going to be an opportunity quite like this to destroy the Tories. And he also acknowledges, if you go back and you look at the speech he gave when he announced he was running, he said he wants to pass the baton down to a new generation. So he's now 60, which is not old, not old in politics, right? He's still got a lot of room for growth and impact. But it's the first time I've ever heard him say, we need, essentially say, we need to get past the Brexit generation. We need to now have new people coming in to the movement who are not Tories, but who understand the urgency of the challenges that we face. Because he does have a very strong sense of urgency. We need to start changing things now because we are at a civilizational moment, in that the things that make us and us, our history, our values, our memory, our ways of life, what we teach our children, our inheritance, our cultural inheritance, he would argue we're now at a tipping point where if we don't move to defend these things over the next 10 years, it will become too late, because you'll have an alliance of kind of elites that don't really care about that, widespread migration, the arrival of hundreds of thousands of people that have no real connection to that, and then it will be too late. So he's also driven by that deeper sense of wanting to really, fix the landscape and pass it on. And he'd be the first one, if he was here, to say he's made mistakes. But he, but I do, I don't want to sound too sympathetic to Farage, but I do know him very well. And the one thing I would say is he does have a lot of integrity. He really does. He really genuinely cares about the country. And if you get a chance, the video he released during the election campaign of him just sitting on a bench with his dog talking about Britain is, to me, probably the most impactful political campaign video I've ever seen. And it was directly out of Roger Scruton. If you go and you look at what Nigel's saying in that video, he's talking about Scrutonian concepts. He's talking about the concept of home, of national community. He's talking about a one nation conservatism that is not this kind of, globalist Tory, strange brand of conservative liberal politics. He's talking about a Scrutonian sense of home and the need to preserve that and the need to protect it, and that it's delicate. And it's a very symbolic video because, it is in the countryside and it is, one man and his dog, and it's tapping on a lot of English themes. So I do think there is a depth to him that his critics don't quite understand.